This week, I've been working with a couple of my private students on Bernard Edwards' classic bass line on Chic's Le Freak, and I thought it might be useful for me to share some of the concepts that I teach that help both me and the people that study with me learn, absorb and practice new bass lines. This video is going to focus on the verse groove from Le Freak. I'll put a link to the full transcription in the video description. If you're having trouble with any of the rhythmic content of the notation, it's quite an involved bass line in terms of 16th note syncopation. If you're having trouble with that, then I have a series of free videos on how to count and read 16th note rhythms, as well as an entire book devoted to the subject. Again, you can find links to both of those in the video description. I'm going to start by playing the verse groove at full speed, and then we'll break it down. So that's the verse groove. We're now going to break it down using 4 essential practice concepts. Concept number 1, slow it down. This might seem like a stupidly obvious thing to say, but I'm always amazed at how many of my students try to rip through new material at full speed and end up falling flat on their faces, right? It's very easy for your ego to tell you that you can play the thing until you come to actually try and play the thing. Unless it's a very, very simple line, which I don't think that this is, then a good place to start is half tempo. So the original tempo of the track is 118 BPM. We're going to go in at 59. Here's what 59 BPM sounds like. So pretty slow, but that's going to help us in the long run. We're not going to practice the line to the metronome to start with. It's too stressful to put any new material in strict time, but we just want that as a guide to make sure that we're not practicing too quickly. So I've got my slow tempo. I'm going to look at my verse line. Here's the notation. And if we look at this, it can look a little bit daunting if you're not an experienced reader. We can make everything more manageable by bringing in concept number 2, which is make it smaller. So I'm just going to remind myself of how 59 BPM feels, and I'm just going to play the material that's on beat 2. I'm going to loop it around a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Let's include beat 1 as well. 3, 4. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. I want to play that little nugget of Bernard Edwards a lot slower and a lot more often than I think I need to or want to. Why is that? Let's think about the skills that get you hired as a bass player. For me, they all conveniently begin with the letter C. I think consistency is our top priority as bass players because so many of the bass lines that we play are just so unbelievably repetitive. We essentially need to be able to play like a sequencer and have every iteration of that bass line come out exactly the same. We need consistency of time, consistency of tone, consistency of note length, and consistency of volume. How do we get those things? Repetition. Consistency comes from repetition. I once studied with a phenomenal upright and electric bass player called Mike Yanish, who is American but lives in the UK, and his thing was, if you're struggling to play something, you need to practice it 100 times in a row. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have to do that many repetitions of all these little items, but it really gave me an insight into the depth to which the top players practice things compared with the rest of us. The second C is conviction. Who's responsible for the time in a band? Certainly not just the drummer. It's everyone's job, but I like to think that as bass players, we are driving the bus. We are leading from the back, right? We don't want to have to check in with the drummer to ask questions about tempo or rhythm. We shouldn't need to ask the keyboard player about chords. We want, in an ideal world, to be completely musically self-sufficient, right? If your playing lacks conviction, if your rhythms are vague, if your plucking hand has no authority so your tone is weak, if your interaction with the rest of the band on stage amounts to you frozen to the spot in terror, staring at your fretboard, then you're not going to inspire confidence from the other musicians, and the music will suffer as a result. Point number 3 is comfort. And by comfort, I really mean technique, right? You want to be comfortable with everything that you're playing on a technical level. And if you're not going to make the other musicians or the audience feel comfortable with what you're playing either. Where does comfort come from? It's about repeating ideas an awful lot at a very slow tempo, which should sound familiar by now. So let's work through the whole of the verse groove now. We're going to add it together bit by bit in keeping with the practice concepts that I've talked about. I'm going to do this a bit quicker than I would normally with a student, just in the interest of time, otherwise we'll be here all day. I recommend playing along with me rather than just passively absorbing the information. You'll get a lot more out of it. Let's remind ourselves of that tempo that we were at. Right, we're going to go for what happens on beat 3 of that first bar. 2/16 and an 8, 3 E and, right? So we're just going to play what's on beat 3. I'm going to make it a 1-bar loop, rests on beats 1, 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, round 1, 2. 1, 2. One more time, 1, 2. Right, I'm happy with that. Let's put that together with the previous 2 beats. So we've now got 3 beats of the first bar. I'm actually going to expand it into a 2-bar loop just to give myself a little bit more recovery time between repetitions. 1, 2, 3, 4, round. Sit through the second bar. 3, 4, round. 2, 3, 4. One more time. 3, 4, round. There we go. Beat 4, pretty straightforward. 8th notes on the 4 and the and. Let's put that whole first bar together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 3, 4. Once more for luck. There we go. Let's look at bar 2. Beat 1. We've got an 8th note, and then we've got a 16th note rest, and then the last possible place of that beat, the A of beat 1, we have another 16th note. So we're going 1 E and right? 1 E and So that might take a little bit of practice. Again, let's just take that second bar and only play the first beat's worth of music. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 E and 3, 4. 1 E and 3, 4. Round 1 E and 3, 4. And 1 E and 3, 4. Really struggling to articulate all the 16th note rhythms and play at the same time there. Apologies. Beat 2 of bar 2 is exactly the same as beat 2 of bar 1. So we should hopefully be able to string these 2 together without any problems. So just beats 1 and 2 of bar 2. 1-bar loop. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. 3, 4. One more time. There we go. Beat 3 of bar 2 is exactly the same rhythm as beat 1, but you're just playing a C instead of a D. Let's see if we can put all 3 of those beats of bar 2 together. 1, 2, 3, 4, and another bar's rest, why not? 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nearly there, the final hurdle. Beat 4 of bar 2. Now, I think it's worth practicing the transition from the end of bar 2 back to the start of bar 1. That's a thing, right? We're going to repeat this an awful lot, so we need to get comfortable with how it feels to go from the end of bar 2 and back to the start of bar 1. I think that a lot of people often fail to practice. They get really comfortable with that 2-bar thing, but fail to work on that important corner. So let's try that now. Let's build that into our practice. So we're just going to have effectively this, right? A 1-bar thing where we're playing beat 4, and then we are hitting beat 1 again. So here we go. 1 bar loop, we're going to come in on beat 4. How does 59 BPM feel? I've forgotten. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Right, happy with that? Let's play the whole thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. That might seem like it took forever, but by now we have the entire part under our fingertips. It's well within our comfort zone, and hopefully we've memorized the thing, right? So we're just very happy playing it at that tempo in that way. The next stage is to bring in the metronome and start putting that part on the grid, playing in strict time. Now this is a stage that often trips up my students. I'll find that they're able to play it unaccompanied, no problems at all. As soon as we put the click on, they struggle to sync up their playing with the metronome. And the cure for that problem is practice concept number 4, which is hear it first. What do I mean by hearing it first? Internal hearing, audiation. Imagining bass lines in your head is a very, very important skill that I believe all the top players are very good at, but hardly anyone talks about it in interviews, right? People are more interested in asking questions about double thumbing and gear, right? But hearing the part in your head that you're going to play at maximum volume is a very, very important skill to foster. It might feel weird. You might not be very good at it the first few times you do it, but I promise that if you spend time working on this thing, this skill of audiation, that it will work wonders for your consistency and your timing, right? If you can't internally hear a bass line in strict time against a metronome, there's no way that you're ever going to play it consistently and accurately without it just being a case of sheer luck. And we don't want to go out there into the real world and make music based on luck, right? We want to be certain. So let's go in at 70 BPM. I'm going to leave the click running. Try and hear it in your head. I'm then going to hum it and then I'm going to play it. So here we go. 1, 2, hear that bass line. Try and turn up that volume. Bum bum. Ba-dun da da dun 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 ba-dun dun dun bum bum. Ba-dun da da dun 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 dun. Let's try playing it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, let's bump up the click. 85, same idea. Let's hear it first. One more time, louder. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a verse 2 variation. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. Click at 99. Again, hear it first. One, 2, 3, 4. let's go to full speed, 118 BPM, but we're going to apply a little metronome exercise trick. 118 BPM can be a little bit stressful if you've got the click working on all 4 beats. Also, it's much better for your internal sense of time to use the metronome less. So I'm going to cut the click in half, but we're going to perceive those metronome clicks at 59 BPM as being beats 2 and 4 of the bar at 118. So here we go. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Hear the line? 2, 3, 4, bum. Boom, bada, bum, 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 bum. That's fast. Dun, 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 dun. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I really enjoy that idea of practicing with the click at half speed, but the click representing 2 and 4. It becomes the snare drum, right? It makes the whole thing groove a little bit more. Now, I would usually do that thing in much smaller increments of tempo for much longer at every speed before bumping up the tempo. That was just because we're on YouTube and we don't have all day, right? If you were playing along with this and you couldn't get it up to full tempo, I should have rephrased that, then don't worry, don't beat yourself up for not being able to reach full tempo. Be nice to yourself, right? I have to say that a lot to myself. I have to be kind to myself on a regular basis, and I have to remind my students to be nice to themselves. It's probably the thing I say more than anything else to students. I never thought that would be the case, right? Be nice to yourself for a number of reasons, right? Most of the time, nobody knows that you can't play this thing up to tempo apart from you, right? Unless someone else is watching you practice, which is weird. Why are people watching you practice? Number 2, the gig is not tonight, right? This is a brand new thing. Hopefully you're not trying to take this out on a gig this evening. If you are, best of luck, right? And then last, but most significantly, you are trying to emulate someone else's style of playing. You're trying to speak someone else's language. And this is Bernard Edwards being about as Bernard could be, right? This is his thing. It's his beef stew, the stuff that he played day in, day out for decades, and we're trying to steal it straight away. So if it takes a little while, there's nothing to be ashamed of, right? I had a student who I was chatting to the other day who was upset because he's working on Teen Town and he couldn't get it up to tempo. And that's exactly the same idea. Like, you're trying to out Jacko at his finest, right? It's a thing that he composed using his language, which suited his particular technique that he'd been working on for decades, right? Don't beat yourself up about chasing ghosts. Be kind to yourself and each other. If you've enjoyed this lesson, then the best thing that you can do is share it with another bass player or musician who you think might find it useful. I operate within a very small niche within a niche, right? Bass players who read music and want to improve their musicianship, which is not many of you, right? So the best thing you can do to help this channel is spread the word, and I will see you next time.